She didn't miss you when you begged for her time. She didn't flinch when you stayed up trying to fix things. She didn't even pause when you started to pull away. But there comes a moment when something shifts, not on the surface, no, inside, quietly. And without warning, she starts to feel what she swore she never would. You want to know when she starts missing you for real? Let's talk about it. Step one, when her ego finally loses the battle. When her ego finally loses the battle, it doesn't happen in a dramatic breakdown. It happens in silence, in the small, quiet moments she never thought would affect her. It begins when the power she once held, the control she believed was hers, starts to feel like a prison. At first, the distance feels empowering. She tells herself she made the right decision, that cutting you off was strength, that not reaching out proves her worth. Her ego comforts her with phrases like, he'll come back, or he's the one who lost me. But as time stretches and nothing comes, those same words begin to feel hollow. Her mind replays the moments where she expected you to chase, to plead, to show weakness, and you didn't. And that unspoken silence from you, that refusal to fight her ego with your own, becomes the loudest mirror she's ever faced. Her ego keeps her from dialing your number. It tells her you don't need to go back. But even as her hands obey, her thoughts betray her. She starts thinking about you when she's alone, when her phone buzzes and it's not your name, when she posts something designed for your eyes but gets no reaction. She was ready for arguments, for closure, for even coldness. But she wasn't ready for indifference. She wasn't ready for peace. And peace, when you're used to chaos and power games, feels terrifying because it means she can't provoke a response. She can't poke a sleeping heart and watch it wake up in love or anger. She begins to realize the war she thought she won left her standing alone on an empty battlefield, speaking to no one but herself. She starts feeling the weight of moments she dismissed before, that last conversation, that look in your eyes, the version of her you always saw beneath the defense and the drama. And for the first time, her ego doesn't feel like armor. It feels like a barrier, something she used to push you away, something that told her she didn't need you until her silence turned into absence and your absence turned into acceptance. It's not that she didn't care. It's that her pride told her not to. Her pride demanded that she choose power over vulnerability, image over intimacy. But now the image starts to crack. She doesn't feel powerful anymore. She doesn't feel admired. She just feels distant, disconnected, and worst of all, replaceable. Her ego will try one last time. It'll whisper, he's probably still waiting. But deep down, she knows she took too long. And in that realization, a different voice emerges, a quieter one, a voice that doesn't scream, doesn't justify, doesn't blame. It simply aches. That's the moment when ego loses the battle, not because it was defeated in a fight, but because it no longer serves her, because it kept her from something real, because she chose to protect her pride at the cost of connection. And now, alone with her thoughts, she realizes the silence she weaponized has turned on her. Step two, when the attention she craved doesn't feel the same, when the attention she craved doesn't feel the same, it doesn't hit her all at once. It creeps in gradually, almost unnoticeably at first. In the beginning, she feels powerful, desired. The world feels like it's at her feet. DMs, compliments, reactions to her stories, glances from across rooms. She eats it all up like validation is a meal she's been starving for. It's intoxicating to be noticed, to be wanted, to feel like she can have anyone she chooses. She posts a picture and the likes flood in. She walks into a room and eyes turn toward her. It's thrilling, addictive, affirming, and for a while it feels like proof. Proof that she made the right decision, that she still got it, that she doesn't need anyone to feel whole, especially not you. But what no one warns her about is the emptiness that follows this high. Because attention is loud, but it's not deep. It fills the surface, not the soul. The compliments are predictable. The conversations are shallow. Everyone wants to be around her, but no one really sees her. They notice the way she looks, the way she moves, the way she laughs, but not the things that matter. Not the way she overthinks before bed, not the way she hides her emotions in sarcasm, not the little details you used to notice without her ever having to explain. And as much as she wants to pretend otherwise, the truth is undeniable. She's surrounded, but she's not connected. She might even start comparing, not outwardly, not in conversations, but in her mind. Someone makes a joke, and it reminds her of how you used to laugh. Someone compliments her, but it doesn't land like it used to when it came from you. She starts realizing that attention from many doesn't feel like presence from one, that being admired isn't the same as being understood, that being wanted for the way she looks isn't the same as being valued for the way she is. And suddenly the attention feels cheap, like a performance, like she's trying to prove something to people who don't even know what they're clapping for. What used to feel like power now starts to feel like noise. She finds herself checking notifications without excitement, going out without energy, entertaining conversations that leave her more drained than desired. There's no spark, no depth, no gravity. She pretends to enjoy it because she's supposed to, because this is what everyone told her would feel empowering. But late at night, when she's scrolling through messages from people who barely scratch the surface, something inside her feels off, like she traded something sacred for something superficial. And as the world keeps giving her more attention, she feels less seen than ever. Because attention can never replace connection. It can only distract her from noticing its absence. And when that distraction wears off, what she's left with is the quiet comparison she tries to suppress, the one that always leads her back to what she no longer has. Step 3. When memories start competing with reality. When memories start competing with reality, it's not because she wants them to. It's because reality starts feeling flat, colorless, incomplete. At first, she's convinced she's moved on. She keeps herself busy, fills her time with new people, new places, new distractions. Everything is supposed to feel fresh, exciting, like a new chapter unfolding. She laughs, she dresses up, she posts like nothing touches her. But there's an invisible gap she can't quite explain, a kind of emotional static in the background, like something is missing from every experience. And that's when the memories start to creep in, not as nostalgia, but as comparison, not just in moments of silence, but in the middle of noise. She's on a date. The person sitting across from her is saying all the right things, maybe even more than you ever did. But something feels off. The way they talk, the way they don't really understand her humor, the way she has to over-explain herself to be heard. It doesn't feel the same. She nods, smiles politely, but her mind is already wandering. Back to the times you got her without words. Back to those long conversations that didn't feel like effort. Back to those silent moments that said more than this entire evening. And no matter how good this new person seems on paper, they can't compete with a connection that lived in the depth of her bones. She tells herself not to romanticize the past, but it keeps showing up in fragments: a song, a street corner, a random smell. Suddenly, she's back in that moment, sitting beside you in a car, laughing over nothing, or laying next to you in a silence that felt safe instead of awkward. The memories don't just revisit, they invade. They start to fill in the emptiness she didn't want to admit was there. They show her how real it once was and how real nothing feels now. She might try to fight it. She'll tell herself that people grow apart, that it wasn't perfect, that you had flaws, and maybe you did. But memory doesn't operate on logic, it operates on feeling. And what she's left with isn't a fantasy, it's the emotional imprint of something that mattered, something that touched her in a way these new experiences don't. And no matter how many adventures she chases, no matter how many new faces she entertains, something always feels like it's missing the weight, the warmth, the meaning. Eventually, even the thrill of distraction loses its appeal. The more she tries to create new memories, the more she feels their shallowness, because memories formed in real connection have a gravity to them. They linger, they echo, they challenge everything she thought she was moving toward. And it's not that she wants to go back. It's that her past starts making her question the value of her present. That's when the confusion begins, when she realizes she's not fully in the moment anymore. She's split, one foot in the now and one foot in the what used to be. And that internal tug of war slowly starts to wear her down, making even the brightest moments feel like shadows of something she once had. Step 4, when her control starts to slip. When her control starts to slip, it doesn't come with warning signs or dramatic meltdowns. It begins subtly, in ways even she doesn't fully recognize at first. She's been so used to managing the narrative, to making the rules, to holding the upper hand. Control for her has always been a form of safety. It allows her to protect her image, her pride, her sense of power. She tells herself she's untouchable, that she's not affected, that she's the one who decides when things begin and when they end. That illusion feels strong for a while. But the truth about control is that it only works when someone else is still reacting. The moment you stop giving her something to react to, her entire framework begins to collapse from within. At first, she believes you're playing a game, that you're just being quiet to provoke her. So she waits, watches, posts strategically, says things through friends, tests the waters without appearing to. But when the silence continues, when the reaction never comes, when the validation she relied on doesn't arrive, that's when she feels something unfamiliar creeping in, uncertainty. The attention she once took for granted is gone. The chase she expected from you has ended. And without it, she starts to feel like she's floating with no gravity, like she's shouting into a void where her voice doesn't echo back. That's the beginning of the unraveling. Her mind becomes the battlefield. Every action you don't take, every message you don't send, every update you post that doesn't acknowledge her presence, it chips away at her sense of control. She thought walking away would keep her powerful. That silence would make you miss her, that the absence would drive you to prove something. But your calm, your distance, your refusal to participate, in the emotional tug of war, it disorients her because for once she's not pulling the strings. She's not dictating the pace. She's not the one being pursued. And that shift in dynamic isn't just uncomfortable, it's threatening to the identity she built around being the one in charge. Now she starts checking your social media without telling anyone. She starts watching your life unfold from a distance, analyzing every post, every story, every caption, looking for signs of weakness, of sadness, of regret. But what she sees instead is strength, peace, growth, and nothing unsettles her more than seeing you move on without resistance. She tells herself you're faking it, that it's just a phase, but her own anxiety betrays her. The same control she once had over her emotions, her narrative, her interactions, starts slipping through her fingers. She becomes more reactive, more agitated. She lashes out in subtle ways, cold responses, mixed signals, sudden interest, followed by even colder withdrawal. All signs of someone trying to regain a sense of power that is no longer hers. Her control begins to feel more like desperation disguised as indifference. And even if she doesn't show it outwardly, internally, she knows she's spiraling because for the first time, you're not giving her something to control. And without that, She's left face to face with herself, without distraction, without dominance, and without the ability to dictate the outcome. Step 5, when she watches you. Detach without revenge. When she watches you detach without revenge, it shakes something deep inside her that she never expected to feel. Not because she thought you were weak, but because she was certain you'd react. She was ready for the anger. She was ready for the bitterness, the cold replies, the attempts to make her jealous. That's what she told herself would come next, because that's what most people do when they feel hurt. They try to hurt back. They make noise. They chase closure or create chaos just to prove they still matter. That's what she had braced herself for, your emotional retaliation. But instead, she was met with stillness. And that's what confused her. Not because it was silent, but because it was clean, emotionally mature, untouched by ego. Your detachment wasn't passive. It wasn't a manipulation. It wasn't, look how happy I am without you performances. It was grounded, real. It was the kind of emotional pullback that doesn't come from hatred, but from peace. You weren't trying to prove a point. You weren't trying to erase her or make her feel invisible. You just stopped pouring energy where it wasn't being met. You didn't announce your absence. You simply became absent. And that quiet withdrawal held more weight than any revenge ever could. She may not admit it out loud, but she notices everything. The shift in your tone, calm instead of reactive, the lack of questions when she sends mixed signals, the way you no longer try to fix anything, the way your world seems to continue without stumbling, without rage, without commentary, and that more than anything starts to disturb her internal world. Because if you're not angry, if you're not fighting back, if you're not seeking revenge, then maybe you've actually accepted the loss. Maybe you've grown past needing validation from the person who couldn't see your worth when it counted. And that reality is something her ego never prepared her to face. She begins to understand that you were never the weak one for loving deeply, that your strength was never in your silence, it was in how you chose to use it. You didn't need to post indirect quotes or seek attention through temporary distractions. You didn't need to match her games with your own. Your evolution was internal, and that kind of healing is threatening to someone who still defines power through reaction. Because while she's still trying to control the narrative, you've already outgrown the story. That kind of growth isn't loud, but it's impossible to ignore. Now, every time she hears your name, there's a weight to it. Not because you're holding resentment, but because you've released her with a grace she wasn't expecting. And grace, when someone is still in their ego, feels more painful than revenge because it reflects everything she failed to be: calm, mature, at peace. Watching you detach without trying to prove anything reminds her that real strength is found in letting go without needing to win. And while revenge fades, your indifference stays, lingering longer, cutting deeper, and saying everything without saying a word. Step 6, when life calms down and reflection kicks in. When life calms down and reflection kicks in, that's when the truth begins to pierce through the distractions she once used as armor. In the chaos, she didn't feel anything. The noise, the people, the late nights, the endless scrolling, the conversations that meant nothing, all of it kept her occupied, and that was the point. The busyness wasn't accidental, it was survival. She couldn't afford to sit still because stillness would force her to feel. And feeling meant confronting the one thing she wasn't ready to face, the fact that something real slipped through her fingers. But life doesn't stay loud forever. Eventually, everything slows. The texts slow, the excitement dulls, the people drift. And for the first time, she's left alone with her thoughts, with no temporary highs to distract her from the silence inside. It starts subtly. A moment at night when her phone doesn't buzz, a song she hasn't heard in months that suddenly feels too familiar, a scent a street, a random flashback that comes out of nowhere and leaves her breathless. She tries to shake it off at first, tells herself it's just nostalgia, just a fleeting thought. But the more she pushes it away, the more it follows her, because the mind doesn't forget what the heart felt. And now that the external noise has quieted, her internal world gets louder. Reflection doesn't ask for permission.